Stop letting your feelings run your life. Every time you explode in anger, crumble under stress, or panic in a crisis, you are surrendering power, information, and opportunity. Emotion is a tactical weakness. The world celebrates the reactive, but the winners are the calculated. Your greatest asset is not intelligence, it is composure. This is not therapy, it is martial arts for your mind. In the next hour, you will train your mind to stay calm, deliberate, and dangerous in moments of high emotion. The era of uncontrolled reaction is over. Your mental takeover begins now. Chapter 1. Emotion is not truth, it is impulse. Listen closely. This is the truth you must accept immediately. Your feelings are not facts. You have been conditioned to treat emotion as the ultimate barometer of truth, the final authority on how to act. You are wrong. Your emotional state is the most vulnerable and volatile part of your mental operating system. Emotion is not truth, it is impulse. It is a primitive neurological impulse, a chemical signal designed for immediate, often survival-driven, reaction. It tells you to run from fear, attack in anger, or cling in desperation. It is useful for surviving a lion attack. It is catastrophic for navigating a modern, complex world of finance, negotiation, and strategic relationships. Your repeating phrase for this entire journey must be, feel the feeling, question the command. The feeling is valid. The command, the impulse to lash out, to quit, to buy, to panic, is almost always wrong. It is almost always a tactical weakness. You have a choice. You can be reactive, tossed by the chemical tides, or you can be strategic, calm, and deliberate. The high-cost surrender. Every single time you allow an emotion to dictate a major decision, you incur a high-cost surrender. Emotion demands immediate relief or immediate gratification. It cannot compute long-term strategy. It lives only in the now. And the decisions made in that emotional now always extract a brutal long-term tax. Angry emails. You send the scathing email in a rush of rage. It feels good for 30 seconds. The long-term cost? A ruined professional relationship, a lost opportunity, a permanent documentation of your lack of control. Impulse buying. The rush of excitement demands that purchase. It relieves the anxiety. The long-term cost? Financial strain, credit card debt, and a pile of useless possessions. Jealousy-driven actions. You act out of insecurity, demanding reassurance or picking a fight. The immediate feeling is a distorted sense of control. The long-term cost? Damaged trust, resentment, and fractured bonds. In every scenario, the immediate benefit, the release of pressure, is negligible, but the long-term strategic cost is immense. Emotion compels you to surrender control, surrender information, and surrender opportunity. It's not about being unfeeling, it's about being logical. Logical people analyze the long-term cost before signing the contract. The emotional decision is always the bad contract. You don't need their permission to control your spending or your tongue. You need the internal authority to override the immediate impulse. That's the key. The 1% rule. The difference between the amateur and the master is not talent. It is not resources. It is not luck. It is the mastery of the 1% rule. Your life is mostly routine. 99% of your day is spent on automatic. Driving, making coffee, performing routine tasks. Your emotions are mostly background noise. The test of your character, the moment that defines your success or failure, occurs in the 1% of moments when emotion demands the wrong action. The sudden crisis that triggers panic. The unexpected insult that triggers fury. The crushing setback that triggers the impulse to quit. The amateur, who has practiced no discipline, collapses instantly in that 1%. They send the email. They lash out. They quit the business. They break the diet. The master, the disciplined professional, recognizes the intense emotional signal. They feel the feeling, but because they have trained, they pause. They choose the correct, strategic action, even though every fiber of their being is screaming to do the opposite. This is the entire game. Your success is built on how you handle the crisis moments. All the work you do in the 99% of calm time is simply preparation for the 1% of high-pressure decision-making. You have a choice. You can let the chemical flood overwhelm you when the pressure peaks, or you can build a mental structure that stands firm. The discipline required is not always pleasant. It is uncomfortable. It is a moment of internal resistance, the friction between the biological impulse and the strategic decision. Embrace that friction. It is the crucible where your true self is forged. You have identified emotion as impulse, and you know the cost of surrender. Now, we must arm you with the specific, immediate tool to intercept that impulse before it sabotages your life. Chapter 2. The Firewall, the 5-second response delay. In the last chapter, you accepted that emotion is impulse. Now, we build the structure to contain that impulse. You need an immediate, practical tool to intercept the feeling before it becomes a catastrophic action. You need to build a firewall. That firewall is the 5-second response delay, the reactionary gap. You must first understand the enemy you are fighting. It is not the external event, the insult, the crisis, the perceived threat. The enemy is the reactionary gap. The gap is the tiny, critical moment between the stimulus, the external event, and the response, your action. In an undisciplined mind, this gap is less than a second. It is purely automatic. When you are emotionally triggered, your primitive brain, specifically the amygdala, takes control. This is the emotional hijack. Adrenaline and cortisol flood your system. Your logical, strategic brain, the prefrontal cortex, goes offline. The chemical storm demands an immediate, forceful release. Screaming, running, attacking, or quitting. This is the moment you are most vulnerable, most volatile, and most likely to engage in the high-cost surrender. Chapter 1. Your job is to widen that gap. You need to create space between the impulse and the action, long enough for the strategic mind to reboot and reclaim control. You have a choice. You can let the chemical flood run your life, or you can impose your will on your own biology. It's not about being slow, it's about being deliberate. The speed of response is meaningless if the response is wrong. The strategic pause. Your immediate, non-negotiable tool is the 5-second silent count. When the emotional hijack begins, when you feel the heat rising, the jaw clenching, the panic setting in, or the words clawing at your throat, you must stop all external movement and immediately begin a forced, internal count to 5. Count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the strategic pause. It is a mental command you must obey instantly, without negotiation. This deliberate delay is the most valuable 5 seconds of your life. What happens in that tiny window? 1. Chemical mitigation. The 5-second delay allows the immediate, most toxic wave of adrenaline and cortisol to subside. You buy back a moment of sobriety. 2. Cognitive re-engagement. The prefrontal cortex starts to flicker back online. It receives the signal and begins to formulate a strategic response instead of a biological reaction. 3. Data check. You gain time to quickly assess the true nature of the stimulus. Is this a real threat? Is this criticism factually accurate? Does this situation require a forceful action or a tactical retreat? The primary rule is absolute. Do not speak until the count is complete. Do not move to action until the count is complete. Just breathe and count. This simple, forced discipline is the master key to emotional control. That's the key. You don't need their permission to pause. You need the discipline to enforce the pause every single time. Breaking the chain. The ultimate objective of the 5-second delay is to break the chain of automatic reaction. The undisciplined life is a series of automatic chain reactions. Stimulus leads directly to impulse, which leads directly to regrettable action. When you successfully execute the strategic pause, you sever the link between impulse and action. You introduce a new, conscious decision point. Stimulus to impulse to 5-second pause, to conscious decision to response. By inserting that moment of conscious decision, you are transferring authority from your primal, emotional mind to your higher, strategic mind. You are turning a reaction into a deliberate, measured response. It's not about suppressing, it's about commanding. You are not bottling up the emotion. You are recognizing the emotion, acknowledging the impulse, and then consciously overriding its command with a superior, strategic directive. This is the very essence of self-control. You are practicing the power of interdiction. You intercept the emotional signal before it can reach your voice or your hand. Practice this in low-stakes situations first. The next time a poorly written email triggers annoyance, stop and count. The next time a driver cuts you off, stop and count. The next time a minor inconvenience makes you want to complain, stop and count. Every successful strategic pause is a successful rep in the gym of emotional control. It hardwires the new disciplined path into your brain. You have built the firewall and armed yourself with the delay. You can now control the crisis moments. Now, we address the larger, insidious problem that undermines consistency: the reliance on fleeting, temporary feelings to drive your long-term success. Chapter 3. Stop chasing the feeling of motivation. You have learned to control the immediate, explosive emotional reaction. Now, we must address the insidious, creeping emotion that sabotages long-term performance: the reliance on motivation. You are obsessed with finding the perfect feeling, the burst of energy, the rush of inspiration, the feeling of being on fire. You wait for this fleeting chemical state before you decide to work. You must stop chasing the feeling of motivation. The motivation myth. Motivation is a wonderful resource when it appears. It is a powerful tailwind, but it is not a prerequisite for action. It is the motivation myth that convinces you otherwise. The myth states, if I don't feel like doing it, I can't do it. This is a lie rooted in emotional dependency. Feelings of excitement and inspiration are fleeting, temporary states. They come and go based on external stimuli, hormonal levels, and novelty. When the task is new, you feel excited. That is motivation. When the task is grinding repetition, you feel bored. That is emotional reality. Basing your long-term action, the marathon of success, on temporary feelings guarantees inconsistency and ultimate failure. The inevitable slump in motivation will become the moment you quit. Motivation is a guest. Discipline is the host. Your ultimate goal is not to feel inspired. Your ultimate goal is to execute the plan. The professional does not rely on a guest to run the household. They rely on the host, the bedrock of their discipline. You have a choice. You can live in the volatile, unpredictable domain of feelings, or you can anchor your life in the stable, reliable domain of deliberate action. It's not about being robotic, it's about being reliable. Your results must be reliable, not your mood. That's the key. The consistency anchor. To defeat the motivation myth, you must divorce your work ethic from your emotional state. You must establish the consistency anchor. This means you must anchor your work to external, objective metrics rather than internal, subjective states. The amateur asks, "How motivated do I feel right now?" The professional asks, "Did I complete the non-negotiable metric for this hour?" Your focus must shift entirely to measurable output. Time on task. Commit to 60 minutes of deep work, regardless of how slow you feel. The time metric is non-negotiable. Completed units. Write 500 words, send 10 emails, or run 3 miles. The unit metric is non-negotiable. When you feel low motivation, you simply show up and obey the metric. The goal is to endure the time or complete the units. You are proving that your discipline is superior to your current feeling. When you adhere to the consistency anchor, 2 things happen. You build proof. You establish a track record that proves to your subconscious that emotional state is irrelevant to action. You build self-trust. Motivation follows action. Ironically, motivation often arrives after you have started working, as a byproduct of momentum and small wins, not a prerequisite for starting. You don't need their permission to be consistent. You don't need the internal feeling of inspiration. You need the simple, cold commitment to the number. It's not about feeling inspired, it's about enforcing the routine. The routine as resilience. The ultimate defense against emotional volatility is an ironclad daily routine. This is the routine as resilience. Your routine is the structure that allows high-value work to happen whether you feel like it or not. It removes decision-making from the emotional domain. Think of an airport. The planes do not take off when the pilot feels inspired. They take off when the checklist is complete and the scheduled time arrives. The process is rigid, objective, and predictable. That is why it works. Your high-value work must be placed inside rigid, predictable time slots. Morning, high-value, complex work before the chaos starts. Low dopamine tasks, Chapter 4. Afternoon, low effort, high necessity administrative tasks. Evening, preparation and planning for the next day's high-value slot. When you hit the time slot, your emotion is irrelevant. The time is the signal, not your mood. Your routine forces your body and mind to comply. This discipline ensures that your focus is never wasted debating if you will work, but only how well you will work. This is the ultimate expression of control over your subjective, emotional self. You don't need their permission to show up. The host of discipline is always ready. You have stopped relying on the fleeting motivation. You have anchored your work in objective, non-negotiable metrics. Now, we confront one of the most destructive and high-cost emotions you will face: the heat of anger. You must learn to harvest its energy without burning yourself or your opportunities. Chapter 4. Anger is information, not ammunition. You have secured your long-term consistency by disconnecting action from motivation. Now, we must confront the most explosive, destructive emotional force in your arsenal: anger. The amateur treats anger like ammunition. They load it, aim it, and fire it immediately, believing the forceful release is justified and effective. The strategist knows better. This is the principle: anger is information, not ammunition. Deconstruct the rage. Anger is the most powerful signal your primitive brain sends. It is a surge of energy and focus. But you must learn to deconstruct the rage and understand its underlying message. Anger is not a random explosion. It is a precise, primal alarm that signals one of 2 things. A boundary has been violated. Someone has treated you with disrespect, crossed a line you established, or taken something that is yours. An expectation was unmet. Reality did not conform to your deeply held assumptions about fairness, competence, or how things should be. The problem is not the signal. It is the impulse to immediately deploy the signal as an attack. The impulse is to yell, to break something, or to send the fiery email. Anger is data. Deploy it as insight, not assault. Your discipline is to feel the intense heat of the rage, the physical sensation, and immediately force the 5-second pause. Chapter 2. Use that pause to ask, what is the data point here? What specific boundary was violated? You have a choice. You can let the chemical rush control your voice and your actions, or you can harness that intense energy for cold, precise analysis. It's not about being passive, it's about being leveraged. The leverage is in the strategic use of the information. That's the key. The boundary reframe. The true, high-value purpose of anger is to inform you where you need to draw or reinforce a line. This is the boundary reframe. When the anger hits, do not release the energy outwardly. Use the heat of the anger to immediately and silently define the violated boundary. If a client insults your work, the boundary is, I demand professional respect for my expertise. If a colleague misses a deadline and impacts your success, the boundary is, my time and reputation are non-negotiable assets. Once the boundary is defined, you must formulate a cold, rational, non-emotional enforcement action. The emotion is the fuel. The plan is the engine. The enforcement action must not be a reaction. It must be a strategic move. The amateur's reaction yells at the client and quits the contract. Emotional release, high cost. The strategist's enforcement, post-pause, writes a calm, one-sentence email defining the professional terms that must be met to continue the relationship, and nothing more. Boundary defined, control maintained, leverage gained. This is the mastery of emotional judo. You take the immense, volatile energy of the rage and redirect it into a focused, targeted expression of your non-negotiable standard. You don't need their permission to set a boundary. You need the discipline to enforce it without emotional volatility. The cost of the yell. You must internalize the strategic cost of uncontrolled anger. The person who loses control loses the room. Yelling, attacking, or public displays of rage instantly diminish your authority and forfeit your strategic advantage. In any high-stakes interaction, a negotiation, a leadership moment, a crucial argument, the moment your voice rises, your effectiveness drops to zero. It signals weakness. It tells the opponent that their stimulus successfully breached your mental firewall. You have shown them your pressure point. It destroys rapport. People stop listening to your logic and start focusing on your volatility. You become unreliable. It creates evidence. You generate regrettable words that can be used against you later in documentation or testimony. Look at real-world examples. The successful CEO, the high-level diplomat, the effective judge, they operate in a low-frequency, contained state. Their power is not in their volume. It is in their composure. The person who can remain cold when others are hot is always the dominant party. Every yell is a donation of power to the opposing side. It's an admission that you failed the 1% rule, Chapter 1. Your discipline is to speak in a measured, even tone, regardless of the internal fire. Use the 5-second pause to regulate your breathing and lower your volume. Let the cold, hard logic of your enforcement action be the only weapon you deploy. You have mastered the volatile energy of anger. Now, we confront the other side of the volatility coin, anxiety, the energy that paralyzes action and consumes your focus with fictional disasters. Chapter 5. Anxiety is a liar. The focus shift drill. You have mastered the heat of anger. Now, we confront the cold, creeping poison that paralyzes more ambition than any other emotion, anxiety. Anxiety feels like preparation. It feels like responsible caution. It is neither. Anxiety is a liar. It is a destructive habit of thought that must be dismantled through disciplined action. The future worry loop. Anxiety is your mind consuming itself. It is the rehearsal of negative outcomes that have not happened, and, statistically, likely never will. This is the future worry loop. Your brain mistakes the act of worrying for the act of solving. You convince yourself that by running through 20 different scenarios of catastrophe, losing money, getting fired, facing public shame, you are somehow preparing. You are not. You are simply exhausting your emotional and strategic resources on fictional problems. Anxiety is attention misdirected. The emotional tax you pay is immense. You spend your energy dealing with imaginary crises, leaving you emotionally bankrupt when a real problem finally emerges. This is the ultimate surrender of control. You are allowing a hypothetical future to ruin your actionable present. You have a choice. You can let your attention be held hostage by the uncertain future, or you can ruthlessly drag your focus back to the only domain where you possess power, the present moment. It's not about being reckless, it's about being focused. The focus is the hard part. That's the key. The three-part question. The disciplined mind needs a clean, immediate tool to intercept the anxiety loop. You must force a sudden, cold injection of logic into the emotional process. This is the three-part question drill. The moment you feel the spike of anxiety, the racing heart, the shallow breath, the overwhelming sense of dread, stop all external movement and initiate this internal triage. Question 1. Is this problem real right now? Is the negative outcome actively occurring in this physical moment? Is the fire burning, or are you just thinking about the fire? If the answer is no, the problem is not a crisis, it is an abstract potentiality. Question 2. Can I solve it right now? If the problem is real, e.g., you received a massive financial bill, can you physically close the file, make the call, or write the check in the next 5 minutes? If the answer is yes, solve it immediately, the immediate yes, Chapter 2. If the answer is no, proceed to Question 3. Question 3. If I cannot solve it right now, what can I do right now that moves me 1% closer to readiness? This is the critical pivot. If you can't solve the problem, you must prepare for it. The only acceptable answer is an action. Not a thought, not a worry, but a concrete action. Example: if the problem is next week's major presentation, can I solve it now? No, the action is, I will open the presentation file and outline the first 3 slides. This sequence instantly starves the anxiety. By asking these questions, you force your attention to stop rehearsing catastrophe and start identifying the next single point of action. You don't need their permission to stop worrying. You need the discipline to enforce the logic. The immediate task command. The anxiety loop is energy directed inward. The only antidote is energy directed outward through physical, useful action. You must coach yourself to replace anxious rumination with an immediate task command. The moment the anxiety spiral begins, you must interrupt the thought pattern with a command for immediate, physical movement. This is your mental eject button. The rules of the command. Physicality. The task must involve your body. It must move your attention from the abstract future back to the concrete present. Usefulness. The task must be objectively useful, but non-critical. It cannot be the task you are anxious about. It must be a low-stakes win. Speed. The task must be executed instantly. Anxious rumination. I am going to fail the entire business and lose everything. Immediate task command. Stop. I will clean my desk right now. Organize the 3 piles of paper. The anxiety energy is redirected into order. Anxious rumination. What if I get sick and can't work? Immediate task command. Stop. I will do 10 push-ups right now. The anxiety energy is redirected into physical self-control. Action is the only antidote to analysis paralysis. Anxiety is fueled by inactivity and abstract thought. Discipline is fueled by concrete action and tangible output. You are choosing to weaponize the anxious energy. You are transforming the panic impulse into a surge of productive movement. This discipline ensures that your mind remains functional and focused on the present reality. You have mastered the explosive emotions of anger and the debilitating chaos of anxiety. Now, we must reinforce your strategic thinking by ensuring you do not fall into the trap of making quick, emotional judgments about external events or people. Chapter 6. The Discipline of Withholding Judgment. You have secured control over your internal emotional response. Now, we turn that discipline outward to protect your decision-making process from external contamination. You must enforce the discipline of withholding judgment. The assumption trap. Judgment feels efficient. When something goes wrong or someone acts unexpectedly, your mind immediately rushes to a simple, satisfying emotional conclusion. They are incompetent, this is a disaster, or this person is malicious. This immediate, emotional judgment is the assumption trap. It is a cognitive shortcut designed to save energy. By labeling a situation or a person instantly, you stop the difficult work of objective analysis. You feel satisfied because the world is neatly categorized, but your subsequent action is built on a foundation of poor, incomplete data. If you immediately label a missed deadline as incompetence, you fail to investigate the actual cause, e.g., they were given faulty data or an unrealistic timeline. Your response will be disproportionate and ineffective. If you immediately label a setback as a disaster, you fail to see the opportunity for iterate or quit. Chapter 5. You panic instead of pivot. Immediate judgment leads to incorrect action. It contaminates your strategic thinking with unnecessary emotional noise. Judgment is a shortcut to incorrect and damaging action. You have a choice. You can live in a world of emotional labels, or you can commit to the cold, hard reality of verifiable facts. It's not about being naive, it's about being factual. The factual mind is the powerful mind. The evidence requirement. To break the habit of emotional labeling, you must establish a strict, non-negotiable mental rule, the evidence requirement. No final emotional conclusion until 3 objective, irrefutable pieces of evidence have been gathered. When you feel the emotional urge to condemn a person or declare a crisis, you must force a 5-second pause, Chapter 2, and mentally demand the evidence. Emotional impulse. That colleague is deliberately trying to undermine me. Evidence requirement. What are the 3 facts? 1. I received a critical email from them. 2. The email was CC'd to the boss. 3. The email contained one factually incorrect statement. Only after gathering these facts can you begin to analyze the true intent. This drill does 3 things. It delays the emotional spike. The act of searching for facts forces your prefrontal cortex back online. It refines your data. You shift your focus from abstract feeling to concrete reality. It reveals complexity. You often find that the initial emotional label was completely wrong. The incompetent colleague was actually saving your job by flagging the faulty data. Judgment is expensive. Delay the conclusion. Every time you judge prematurely, you are paying the price of potential miscalculation or destroyed relationships. You don't need their permission to slow down your analysis. You need the discipline to resist the satisfying rush of the easy conclusion. That's the key. The benefit of neutrality. The highest form of this discipline is achieving the benefit of neutrality. Neutrality means consciously observing a situation without attaching an emotional valence, good, bad, fair, unfair, to it. You are simply reporting the facts to yourself. Maintain a neutral, non-judgmental stance. Instead of saying, "This colleague is trying to ruin my life," you say, "I observe this person behaving this way." This simple shift in language is profound. It moves the focus from their intention, which you cannot know, to their behavior, which you can verify. The benefit of neutrality is that it allows you to act strategically rather than react defensively. Reaction, judgmental, they are malicious. I must attack them before they attack me, leads to a high-cost emotional fight. Action, neutral, they are behaving in a way that creates risk. I will adjust my position to mitigate that risk, leads to a cold, strategic maneuver. You have a choice. You can expend your energy fighting the labels you invent, or you can conserve your energy for the actions you must take. The neutral mind conserves all energy for action. This discipline protects your composure from the chaos of others' actions and the pollution of your own assumptions. You have mastered the external environment through objective analysis. Now, we must turn to the positive emotions, the joy and enthusiasm, and ensure they do not become a vulnerability. Chapter 7. The Vulnerability of Oversharing Joy. You have secured your composure against the negative, destructive emotions of anger and anxiety. Now, we must face the more seductive, positive emotions, excitement and joy, and recognize their danger. Emotional control is not just about containing rage. It is about containing all intense feelings that compromise strategic discipline. This is the principle, the vulnerability of oversharing joy. The energy leak. The moment you conceive a major plan, the business idea, the fitness goal, the relationship shift, you feel a rush of excitement and intense enthusiasm. This feeling demands to be shared. You rush to tell friends, post online, and seek validation for your intention. This is a profound energy leak. When you prematurely share your excitement, you leak psychological energy, and you make the goal less likely to materialize. The psychological mechanism is simple but brutal. When you verbalize an intention and receive immediate positive feedback, praise, likes, encouragement, your brain often registers the social approval as if you have already achieved the goal. You get the dopamine hit of the victory now, without having done the hard, monotonous work. The ego is satisfied. The internal pressure required to drive the tedious execution is instantly diminished. Enthusiasm is not proof. You spent all day talking about the marathon you'll run. You feel like a runner, but you have not run a single mile. You spent all night outlining your million-dollar idea to your friends. You feel like a successful entrepreneur, but you have not signed a single contract. You have spent your emotional capital too soon. The initial excitement was the fuel. By leaking it outwardly, you guarantee that when the inevitable discomfort of the process, Chapter 4, hits, you will have no internal resources left to draw upon. You have a choice. You can spend the energy talking about the work, or you can spend the energy doing the work. It's not about being secretive, it's about being efficient. The efficient person conserves every ounce of internal energy for execution. The quiet build. The true purpose of intense, positive emotional energy, excitement, enthusiasm, vision, is to serve as fuel for execution. You must instruct yourself to channel that energy inward as fuel for execution, rather than outward as chatter seeking validation. This is the quiet build. When the excitement hits, you must recognize it as a momentary resource, a surge of energy that is too valuable to waste on conversation. The action command for joy. Acknowledge. Feel the intense, positive excitement. Mentally label it, this is a surge of energy. Redirect. Immediately turn that energy into the next most difficult, most critical task on your project list. Do not talk about the idea. Write the first 10 pages. Do not talk about the workout, do the hardest set right now. Enforce silence. The goal is to work until the feeling of excitement subsides, leaving behind only the satisfaction of completed output. This channels the energy into tangible momentum. Your internal enthusiasm must be utilized to overcome the boredom and discomfort of the initial execution phase. You don't need their permission to work in silence. You need the discipline to resist the social pressure to share. That's the key. The disciplined person uses that moment of enthusiasm to build a 3-foot wall of separation between themselves and the world, a wall made of completed work. The rule of the undisclosed win. The true master reserves the intensity of their joy for the moment of actual, undeniable victory. Even then, the celebration is contained. You must embrace the rule of the undisclosed win. This is the discipline of enjoying major victories in silence, allowing the results to speak for themselves when they are undeniable, and only then. When the massive deal is signed, the project is finally launched, or the physical goal is achieved, the primary joy is internal. It is the deep, quiet satisfaction that comes from self-mastery and earned success. You celebrate with a small, conscious moment of internal acknowledgement, and then you immediately pivot to the next goal. The celebration is private, the victory is public. The public knows you won because they see the result, not because they witnessed your emotional fireworks display. This discipline protects your long-term momentum. The moment you pause to celebrate too loudly or too long, you risk emotional complacency. You risk believing the journey is over. The silence after the win ensures that the momentum is immediately channeled into the next phase of the unconditional work ethic, Chapter 6. Your control over your positive emotions is just as critical as your control over your negative ones. You have secured your energy from the leakage of external validation. Now, we confront the final destructive emotion, self-pity, the internal drama that sabotages all responsibility. Chapter 8. The cold, hard truth of self-pity. You have learned to control the volatile extremes of your emotions, the hot rage and the cold anxiety. But now we must confront the most insidious, creeping weakness in the human psyche, self-pity. Self-pity is the emotional flu. It is highly contagious, debilitating, and completely voluntary. It feels like empathy, but it is nothing more than mental surrender. This is the cold, hard truth of self-pity. Pity as paralysis. Self-pity is the ultimate emotional indulgence. It is a mental timeout that you grant yourself, excusing inaction and breeding further weakness. When a setback occurs, when you lose the client, miss the deadline, or suffer a personal blow, self-pity is the voice that whispers, "I deserve a break. I deserve to feel sorry for myself. This is too hard for me." The danger of this indulgence is that it instantly shifts your identity from agent of action to victim of circumstance. It is a massive breach of the ironclad rule of responsibility, Chapter 9. The moment you engage in self-pity, you are saying, "I am powerless. I am defined by this external wound." This paralysis is the goal of the self-pitying mind. It justifies inertia. It stops the non-zero day, Chapter 2, and guarantees that the setback becomes a collapse. Pity is a choice, not a response. You have a choice. You can surrender your energy to the seductive ease of self-pity, or you can use that energy to execute the next difficult, non-negotiable step. It's not about being heartless, it's about being relentless. The relentless mind understands that emotional indulgence is an unaffordable luxury. That's the key. The time constraint. Self-pity is a natural, initial impulse. You are human. The pain of the setback is real. Your discipline is not to eliminate the impulse entirely, but to box it in and process it ruthlessly. You must adopt the time constraint. You are allowed a maximum of 60 seconds of self-pity after a setback. Not an hour. Not a day. 1 minute. When the negative event occurs, allow yourself that minute. Let the feeling of unfairness, loss, or pain wash over you. Look at the emotional data. But when the 60 seconds are up, the alarm bell goes off, and the emotional indulgence ends immediately. It is replaced by the aggressive pivot, the reframe command. Self-pity language: I worked so hard, and it all went wrong. I can't believe this happened to me. Reframe command: immediate. You pivot immediately to, what is the lesson here? What is the single most valuable piece of data I can extract from this right now? The purpose of the 60 seconds is to acknowledge the loss and then move instantly to the solution. The disciplined mind treats emotional suffering like a business expense. Acknowledge the cost, document the loss, and then immediately calculate the next move to recoup the capital. This rapid pivot prevents the emotional contagion from spreading from the single event to your entire life operating system. It ensures you never linger in the wreckage. Chapter 5. You don't need their permission to move on. You need the discipline to enforce the timer. The responsibility lock. The ultimate defense against self-pity is the absolute embrace of personal responsibility. This is the responsibility lock. Self-pity thrives when you believe something happened to you. Emotional control thrives when you believe you allowed it to happen or miscalculated the risk. We must relentlessly reiterate the central tenet that emotional control starts with absolute ownership of all outcomes, regardless of external unfairness. The market crashed. You failed to diversify properly. The partner betrayed you. You failed to recognize or enforce appropriate boundaries. The pitch failed. You failed to anticipate the investor's core metric. When you lock down responsibility, you instantly remove the justification for pity. Pity needs an external villain or an external cosmic unfairness to survive. The warrior mind, Chapter 9, accepts the setback as a self-inflicted wound, because a self-inflicted wound means you have the power to heal it and prevent it next time. This is the ultimate emotional checkmate. You are taking the energy of the setback, the immense emotional weight, and immediately transforming it into an asset. The power to change. It's not about being perfect, it's about being accountable. You don't need their permission to be powerful. Your power resides in your non-negotiable right to choose your response. Every time you reject the luxury of self-pity, you reaffirm your internal authority. You have now built a comprehensive system for emotional control. You have secured your mind against all forms of internal chaos. The final step is to implement this system as a permanent way of life, ensuring your composure becomes your greatest, most dependable strength. Chapter 9. Controlling the information diet. You have secured your internal state against impulse, anxiety, rage, and self-pity. But the external world is a relentless engine of emotional chaos, constantly trying to breach your mental firewall. To maintain the unshakable composure, you must become a ruthless gatekeeper of what you allow into your mind. You must enforce controlling the information diet. The external volatility tax. The modern information environment is designed for maximum emotional impact. News cycles thrive on fear, outrage, and urgency. Social media algorithms feed on comparison, envy, and tribal hostility. Every time you engage with constant negative news, digital outrage, or unproductive gossip, you are paying an external volatility tax. This tax is levied directly against your emotional bandwidth. You spend your precious strategic energy reacting to events you cannot control, concerning people you do not know, and issues that have zero bearing on your daily, actionable life. Emotional bandwidth is finite. Your capacity for discipline, focus, and rational decision-making is a limited resource. When you saturate that capacity with external emotional noise, you leave nothing left for your high-value work. Emotional contagion, outrage, is contagious. When you consume external volatility, your internal system begins to match that frequency. You become reactive, defensive, and easily provoked. Minimize inputs to maximize control. If your goal is to be calm, deliberate, and dangerous in a crisis, you must spend your non-crisis time in a state of controlled, low-frequency input. You have a choice. You can be the passive recipient of whatever emotional agenda the media feeds you, or you can be the disciplined consumer who selects inputs based on strategic necessity. It's not about being ignorant, it's about being intelligent. The intelligent person only pays for information that directly increases their capacity for action. The three-source rule. To enforce a high-quality, low-volatility diet, you must adhere to the three-source rule. Your challenge is to limit your information intake, news, current events, and general world data, to 3 high-quality, objective sources per day, and ruthlessly filter everything else. The sources must be objective, fact-based, and focused on analysis, not urgency. They should serve your strategic goals, financial, professional, or geopolitical understanding. Non-negotiable filters. No social media news feeds. This is where the emotional volatility is engineered for maximum contagion. No constant push notifications. The interruption destroys the flow of your deep work contract, Chapter 4, and triggers the emotional need to react. No gossiping conversations. If the topic is an external event that requires no actionable response from you, terminate the discussion with calm neutrality. When you limit your inputs, you force your mind to focus on the essential. You transform information consumption from an addiction into a strategic intelligence process. You don't need their permission to ignore the urgent chatter. You need the discipline to enforce the filter. That's the key. By severely limiting the number of external events you allow into your sphere of attention, you massively reduce the frequency of emotional triggers. This protects your composure and conserves the bandwidth required for the 1% moments of real crisis. Chapter 1. The mute button. This discipline works because of a core principle of emotional control. It is easier to control the emotional inputs than it is to control the emotional outputs. Trying to stop yourself from yelling after you have consumed 4 hours of outrage news is a losing battle. You have already paid the volatility tax. You are already chemically charged. The true strategic maneuver is to hit the mute button on the input source itself. Your immediate, tangible action plan. Delete/disable apps. Remove social media apps and news apps from your phone's home screen, or disable all notifications. Make the consumption of non-essential information difficult. Define a consumption slot. Designate a single, finite time window, e.g., 15 minutes after lunch, for checking your 3 approved sources. Outside of that window, the information does not exist for you. Use external control. Utilize software or hardware tools to block access to high-volatility sites during your prime working hours. This proactive control ensures that the emotions you produce, your reactions, your focus, your energy, are entirely generated by your own life, your own goals, and your own choices, not by the algorithms of external manipulators. It's not about ignoring reality, it's about choosing your battleground. You choose to fight only the battles you can win, and you choose to be informed only by the data that leads to effective action. Everything else is discarded as strategic noise. You have now established total control over the flow of information into your mind. This discipline is the final piece of the structural defense against emotional chaos. You are ready to make this hardened, composed state your permanent, unbreakable identity. Chapter 10. Your composed future, the unbreakable mind. You have reached the final chapter of your transformation. You have spent this time forging an internal structure that is impervious to the chaos of the emotional world. You have disarmed the inner impulse. You have mastered the external volatility. You have earned your unbreakable mind. This is not the end of the work, it is the establishment of your composed future. The identity shift. You are no longer the person who started this audiobook. That person was reactive, easily triggered, and prone to the high-cost surrender, Chapter 1. That person's value was constantly fluctuating with their mood. Your new self is defined by the identity shift. Your new identity is one whose internal state is stable, regardless of external chaos. When you operate from this stable identity, your decisions become predictable in their quality, even if the external situation is unpredictable in its nature. People know what they will get from you: calm, rational, and decisive action. The market can crash, but your anchor holds. The criticism can sting, but your response is measured. The excitement can surge, but your actions remain focused. Your stability is your strategic advantage. It makes you the most reliable person in the room. This reliability is the foundation of trust, influence, and ultimate success. This shift is rooted in the effort contract, Chapter 6. Your value is now anchored in the unwavering execution of your discipline, not in the momentary drama of your feelings. You have eliminated the internal conflict by prioritizing discipline over desire. You have a choice. You can allow external circumstances to define your internal state, or you can let your internal standard define your response to all external events. It's not about being emotionless, it's about being sovereign. You are the sovereign ruler of your own mind. Composure as currency. In the modern world, talent is abundant. Intelligence is common. But true, unflappable composure is rare. You must understand that composure is currency. In any high-stakes situation, a crisis meeting, a negotiation, a moment of corporate turbulence, the most valuable trait is the ability to think clearly while others are panicked. When everyone else is operating on the volatility of the reactionary gap, Chapter 2, your mind, trained by the 5-second pause, is operating with the clarity of a strategist. While they are yelling, you are listening and gathering data, Chapter 4. While they are consumed by the future worry loop, Chapter 5, you are identifying the 1% solution. While they are wasting time with the language of weakness, Chapter 8, you are taking absolute responsibility and executing the next command. Your composure gives you the strategic advantage of time and perspective. It allows you to buy low and sell high on decisions, to remain calm when everyone else is selling, panic, and to move decisively when the opportunity is ripe. This makes you indispensable. People do not pay for knowledge, they pay for reliability under pressure. You don't need their permission to be the calmest person in the room. You need the discipline to enforce the silence and the analysis. That's the key. Your earned composure is the only currency that cannot be devalued by the economy, destroyed by criticism, or lost to circumstance. It is the final, permanent asset you own. The permanent contract. The training is complete, but the discipline is not a temporary pursuit. It is a permanent contract. You must accept that this emotional discipline is an active, daily pursuit, ending the cycle of reactive living forever. You are never finished. Emotional control is a muscle. If you stop exercising it, it will atrophy. You must constantly seek the friction, not to suffer, but to maintain the edge. Every day starts with the ironclad routine, Chapter 3. Every day requires you to reject the emotional noise, Chapter 9. Every trigger requires the immediate use of the firewall, Chapter 2. This is not a temporary fix, this is a rewrite of your operating system. Your goal is to sustain the mindset of the warrior, vigilant, prepared, and always in control of the interior landscape. The moment you become complacent, you invite the return of the impulse. The true strength of the Stoic is not that they feel no emotion, but that they never allow an emotion to veto a rational, strategic command. You have the knowledge. You have the tools. You have the unconditional work ethic to sustain it. You have one final, non-negotiable directive to seal this identity. You must choose the next moment of high emotional stress, the next irritation, the next piece of bad news, the next frustrating delay, and you must actively and perfectly execute your full system. The 5-second pause, the reframe command, the immediate action. Do not merely cope with the next crisis. Take command of it. Use the chaos to prove the strength of your new, unbreakable mind. This is your life. Take command. Conclusion. You are no longer a slave to feeling. The choice is yours, and the choice is absolute. Emotion is impulse. Discipline is power. You now have the firewall. You know how to use the 5-second pause to hijack the panic. You understand that action is the only antidote to analysis paralysis. Never again will you lose control when the pressure mounts. Never again will you surrender your energy to worry or pointless rage. You are the thermostat, not the thermometer. Your life demands command, not reaction. Your strength is not in how much you can lift, but in how much you can withhold. Your final assignment is to step into the next moment of high stress and actively choose not to react. This is your life. Take command.